UFC on Fox Sacramento. It was Saturday, December 17th at the brand new Golden One Center there in downtown Sacramento with a reported attendance of 13,000 fans there for Van Zandt versus Waterson. Real quickly before I break down the four-fight main card, big victories by Sultan Aliyev, Hector Sandoval, as well as Eddie Lyon returning to the winning track, knocking out Take Mizugaki. Leslie Stevens also had a Fight of the Night performance win over Irene Aldana in the women's bantamweight division. Aldana, a former Invicta fighter, too, so that was a really good one. Former friend of the show, Scott Holtzman, ended up losing to Josh Emmett, so hopefully Scott will be able to return back to the winning track in his next fight. And also Colby Covington, one of the young prospects in the welterweight division, ended up taking out Brian Barberina. Getting to the main card, which started in the welterweight division, as Michigan's own Mike Perry took on Alan Joboy. Before the fight, I did pick Mike Perry. He had really shown an aggressive nature. He's already fought some good competition already in his short UFC career, and obviously has some tremendous power. And Joboy, a guy that I think has, maybe kind of hit his peak a little bit, maybe now is towards the downside of his career. Maybe this would have been a time for Mike Perry to catch him. However, Joboy, definitely the more technical of the two fighters, showed that a lot. He really mixed up his variety of strikes, especially with his kicks, had a little better in and out movement, and did mix in some takedowns, something that's very uncharacteristic of Alan Joboy, as he did attempt 5 takedowns, was successful on 2 of them, coming in the first and third rounds. And I think overall, Mike Perry didn't really handle the circling very well of Joboy in the movement. Yeah, he tagged him a few times in this fight. That's definitely apparent. It's not like Mike Perry didn't land anything. But the output wasn't enough to stop the movement. He wasn't really doing much to cut off Joboy. He wasn't checking those kicks. He really wasn't throwing. He threw a few kicks, but none of them were that great. That's obviously an area he's going to have to work on his game. And also, maybe he has to work on not throwing everything 100%, going for that home run, mixing a couple, change-ups in there, and instead of just focusing on the overhand right. And those are just little things. I mean, this was a close fight. I did think Joboy won. I didn't think he completely dominated Mike Perry or anything. But, landing 37 of 90, that's 33%. That's usually not going to get the job done. Alan Joboy threw 43 more strikes and landed nearly double the strikes, 69 to 73, so not quite double, but pretty close. Add that in with the takedown attempts to Mike Perry's none, you can see why Alan Joboy got the victory. Now, Alan Joboy thought a much smarter fight. Mike Perry definitely showed that he's had, but this is a learning experience. Alan Joboy is a solid veteran. He's been around the game for a while. He's been around the UFC for a while, and fought a very professional fight. And I think Mike Perry, even though he'll go in there thinking, I didn't really get hit with nothing, I'm coming out okay, this is a good learning experience for him, because this is what guys are going to try to do to him. They're going to try to circle around, make him use footwork to cut him off, and, try to just avoid that one big power strike and counter back, especially with effective kicks to the leg and body, because they know he's not going to catch them and take them down. So that's an area that his game is going to have to adjust to, and for Joboy, he did what he needed to get the win, and that's what he did. Next fight of the evening, Uriah Faber will be taking on Brad Pickett. This was Uriah Faber's swan song, his retirement fight, taking on another former WEC competitor. A lot of the build-up to this fight was, it's crazy that these two hadn't fought each other before, which is true. They've been around the bantamweight division and the WEC for a very long time, both in the top of the division for most of their careers. So the fact that they hadn't fought was definitely surprising, but it was kind of hard to see Brad Pickett not winning, especially that first round, super dominant. Faber dropped him, had Pickett hurt, a couple of close submissions attempts, ended up outstriking him 44-3 in that round. Round 2, Pickett was really starting to land that kind of back calf heel kick that he was landing. That was definitely affecting Uriah Faber's movement. He did have some success with that, but Faber did take him down 2 times in that round. That round was kind of close, but I think with the takedowns, you probably still get Faber. And round 3 was definitely all Faber. I think at that point in time, Pickett was pretty tired. Yeah, sure, that kick was effective, but by that point in time, he just he's not used to grappling that much. Faber took him down 3 times in that round, outstruck him 27-5. Definitely a very vintage Uriah Faber with attacking a lot in the takedowns, and he got the victory. It wasn't the most flashy victory, but overall pretty dominant. He goes out as one of the best fighters ever in any division. Ends up with an overall career record of 34-10. Along the way, capturing the WEC featherweight championship, and he ended up, I think he won that in 2006, and was able to defend that successfully 5 times before eventually losing that championship to Mike Brown in 2 epic fights. One of them definitely a Fight of the Year candidate back in 2009. He has beaten the likes of Chance Farr, Dominic Cruz, Cole Escovedo, Jens Pulver, Rafael Asunciao, Taki Mizugaki, Eddie Weiland, Brian Bowles, Scott Jorgensen, Ivan Menjivar, Michael McDonald, Bruce Leroy. I mean, just a who's who of who's been fighting in the lower weight classes for years, and I probably missed a couple names in there as well. This is just going back to his days in the WC back in since 2006, so for the last 10 years. And definitely was a pioneer of the sport, a guy that for the longest time was known as the best fighter that wasn't in the UFC because he couldn't fight in the UFC because of the weight class. And for a lot of people, if you didn't have a chance to watch him kind of during his prime there of 2006 to 2009, I highly recommend going back on Fight Pass and watching some of his fights. This guy truly was an elite talent, and I know some people kind of give him a knock because he tried 4 times to win a UFC championship and didn't come out top. 2 of those were against Dominic Cruz, and the other 2 times, Renan Barão, that was during his prime. Renan Barão was on a huge roll. The first fight against Renan Barão was definitely close. He lost. The second fight, he got caught. And that's not excuses or anything. That's not saying like, oh, he should have beat this guy. That's just sometimes how it works out in sport. I mean, the Buffalo Bills made it to 4 straight Super Bowls and didn't win. So sometimes, and they're still regarded as some of the greatest teams in NFL history. So Uriah Faber definitely is a great, deserving of being in the Hall of Famer. And even though he didn't capture the UFC championship, he did capture the championship that he could get at the time. And 5 title defenses is nothing to scoff at. That's a pretty significant run. You can go back to UFC history and how many champions have made it past 5. Not too many. Not too many have made it past 5. So getting to 5 is a milestone, regardless of whether the division's weak or not, or how good you were actually perceived in the pound-for-pound things. Uriah Faber did it his way, built up a team, has built up a lot of great talent over the years. Obviously, we're going to see, we saw one of those talents on work in the main event, and we're going to see another one of those talents on display coming up this weekend in Las Vegas. Again, UFC 207, which I will get to here in just a moment. But definitely an awesome way to go out. Glad he was able to do it on his terms in his city and go out with a win as well. Definitely one of the fighters that I pretty much started watching from the very beginning of me watching the sport, and a guy that I always rooted for and cheered for and liked watching. He was very rarely in a boring fight. He beat a lot of people and had a lot of great memories watching Uriah Faber, and he will definitely be missed in the world of mixed martial arts as a fighter. The next fight of the evening, the co-main event, that was coming in the welterweight division as 2 of the young guns in the UFC, Mickey Gall, took on Sage Northcutt. Early on, Mickey Gall was able to land a takedown there in the first round. Sage Northcutt did a very good job of coming up. He did get taken down a second time, but then towards the middle of the first round, Sage kind of tagged Mickey a little bit. Was starting to get very confident in his striking, was even looked like he was talking some trash to Mickey Gall, cut Mickey Gall open a little bit, and looked supremely confident, and did a lot after a couple of submission attempts there by Mickey Gall. I thought Sage Northcutt ended the round very strong, could make a case that he won that round, a very close round. In round 2, Sage was coming out again very confident with his striking, but in one of those exchanges, Mickey Gall was able to kind of, not quite a super wild, but was able to land a nice counter right, wobbled Sage. Mickey Gall was able to get the fight back to his domain, the ground, got the back, and got in the rear naked choke there in the second round at 140. And I think this is a case of maybe Sage getting a little too careless with his stand-up, maybe getting a little too confident, because he's definitely the better stand-up striker. There's no doubt about that. Mickey Gall definitely has to learn that part of his game, and obviously that's something that other fighters moving forward can exploit, that if he doesn't turn it into a grappling match, he definitely has holes in his game there. But Sage got a little too close, kind of got caught in the pocket, with his hands down a little bit. Mickey Gall was able to land a shot, and he took full advantage of it, did not allow Sage to recover from that standpoint, and got himself the victory. Now, afterwards, he says that he's going to move down to 155, which, boy, I thought he was a pretty big middleweight. I mean, this is a guy who's listed at 6'2". There aren't too many welterweights at 6'2", so... And he's 24, so he's starting to really, his body's going to be set in. So if he can make 155, good luck to you. I mean, that's just what he wants to do. I think he might be better off staying at 170, much like Sage, who's about 5'11", 6 foot, a very similar build, a guy that definitely cuts a good amount to make 155. This fight was at welterweight. We'll see if it's funny. Both of Sage's losses so far in the UFC have come at 170 pounds. He is undefeated at 155. So Sage definitely has a choice to make whether he wants to fight at 170 or 155. But I think by no means people are like, oh, Sage has lost twice now. He doesn't have. I mean, he came into this thing almost as a pure karate striker. Only had about 4 or 5 fights on his record. I think he's done pretty well so far. He took on a guy that has an extremely good ground game. I mean, this is not just some guy that's a good grappler. He has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, is very close to getting his black belt, before he's 25. So this is a guy that has legitimate grappling skills. So let's not throw that out the window here. Sage got caught and wasn't able to recover in time. Mickey Gall took advantage of it. I don't think it means that Sage is not going to have a good career. I think he's going to have to learn to pick a weight class. I think that's apparent. And number 2, his biggest hole in his game is his ground game. Conversely, the biggest hole in Mickey Gall's game is his stand-up. So both those guys, if they want to get to the next level, they got to work on that. Sage has really only been doing grappling for about a year or 2 years, really. He's been doing all karate and kickboxing. So, of course, he's going to not be as strong in that category. And also, that could be the first time he's really ever been tagged like that. That I've seen, he hasn't really been hit that hard. And in most of his fights, he's been able to put out people quickly. And obviously, he didn't. I mean, it was a great shot. He wasn't able to recover. But that's another thing you got to look at, too. How often has he been hit? Has he been beat up? That's a skill set you learn, too, how to take a punch and recover quickly from it. So, for Sage is not that super negative, really. I still think he has a lot of potential. I mean, he's 22 years old, 21. I mean, let's see, he was born in 1996. Yeah, he's 20 years old and has 10 professional fights and already has 5 fights in the UFC. What was I doing when I was 20 years old? You know what I mean? I was sure as heck not a professional athlete. I can tell you that much. I was having fun not studying at college. All right, no, I study, but that's what I mean. Most 20-year-olds are not doing what Sage Northcutt's doing. I mean, this kid just took a couple of is less than 2 years out of high school, and he has all this money, this attention, and fame. He has a lot of things going on, and so far he seems to be handling. But that's something he's going to learn. Obviously, Mickey Gall, has a few more years under his belt, has a little less fights. So far has been able to handle it, but I think Mickey Gall showed that, all right, maybe the stand-up wasn't working, but he took advantage of the opportunity, saw it, and got the victory. Main event of the evening in the women's strawweight division. Before we get to that, we have the winner of the main event there for the women's strawweight main event between Paige VanZant and Michelle Waterson, as the karate hottie Michelle Waterson makes her return here on Beyond the Cage. And Michelle, thanks again for joining me here on Beyond the Cage.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get to your fight here against Paige VanZant. Of course, your first fight in well over a year from you. You had a couple of injuries sustained in that time. During that time, what was the kind of the hardest part for you in that about 18 months or so?
I think the hardest part would have to be just, trying to keep the faith in that I was going in the right direction. Just because training 3 to 4 times a day and putting in so much sacrifice and not seeing any reward or anything coming in, it's just hard. So you kind of have to just be faithful and understand that it'll come.
Now, getting to the fight itself, obviously, Paige Van Zant, one of the rising stars here in the UFC, ranked in the top 10 of the division. Obviously a big matchup in itself, and then you found out it was the main event. Did that surprise you at all that your fight was the main event, or was that something that you thought was relatively possible considering you were taking on somebody like Paige Van Zant?
With the two names, I knew that we could pull off the main event and do it in a great fashion. So, I always knew that, me and Paige would cross, lines eventually. And I'm just excited that they gave us the opportunity to do it so soon.
Now, of course, before the fight at weigh-ins, you and Paige had a little bit of a dance-off. It looked like something she had planned. So did that kind of surprise you a little bit? You obviously rode with it very well. But was that kind of fun, or did that surprise you, or whatnot?
Yeah, it was fun. Anything you could do to kind of break up the normalcy of, or the stress of the fight. Obviously I knew I was going in there to fight, and that didn't change my mentality. I've, been training for the last 10 weeks to fight. But you got to be ready for anything. And so I wish I had a little bit more time to prepare some more high-level dance moves, but was caught off guard.
Now, of course, you were fighting in Sacramento, where Paige Van Zant resides most of the time that you're training there with Team Alpha Male, so you kind of going into enemy territory. Was that kind of a new feeling for you, kind of fighting someone in their hometown, so to speak?
I fought in somebody else's hometown before. I've been the underdog before. I didn't get the feeling that I wasn't unwanted. I got a lot of love from Sacramento, so I was just going in there to do my thing. And as far as it being, her hometown and stuff, that's true. But once you step inside the octagon, that's my world. So I felt comfortable there.
Now, of course, before you stepped into the octagon against Paige, Sacramento's favorite son there, Uriah Faber, fought for the last time in his professional mixed martial arts career. I wanted to get your thoughts on, obviously, the fight and obviously his outstanding career.
Uriah's done so much for the sport, and he's such a positive influence on the sport and on just people in and outside of fighting. And so I think it was it's great, a great place and a great energy for Uriah there, and I'm happy for his win, and it was a great fight. Like I said, he's done so much for the sport, and he is such a positive person that just doing nothing but bettering the sport. I kind of wish that he was co-main event, or even just it being his last fight to maybe even be the main event would make sense, but that's not in my control.
Now, getting to your actual fight here against PVZ, a lot of people were talking about, obviously your striking versus her aggressive nature, especially moving inside and getting into the clinch. I think people were kind of sleeping on your grappling game a little bit, and you obviously proved that you were the superior grappler that night, taking her down, landing 13 of 18 strikes, and then obviously eventually working for that submission. Was that the game plan all along, to try to attack her with takedowns, or is that just something you saw develop there within that first round?
I don't know why people are sleeping on my grappling. Like, the majority of my wins are through submission, so they probably shouldn't be sleeping on my grappling. But, the game plan was just to be prepared anywhere, because we know that Paige is still a developing fighter and that she's getting better with each fight. And so just to be better at every situation.
Did she do anything in this fight to surprise you at all?
No.
Now, of course, with the win, you shoot up the rankings. You go from number 11 before the fight, now ranked number 7, according to the UFC. A lot of great women ahead of you: Tisha Torres, Jessica Andrade, Rose, Carla, Carolina, of course, Claudia Gadelha, all just ahead of you here in the rankings. Would any of those women be someone you would like to take on next?
I got my eyes on the gold, and so whatever I have to do to get there is what I want. Claudia has been kind of a teammate of mine, so, her and I are training together, so that's not something that I want to see happen. But anything in the top 5, I'd like whatever can get me to the gold the fastest.
Now, of course, because you had the significant layoff before this fight, are you looking to get back in there? And obviously, how quick the fight went against Paige. Are you looking to get back in there quickly, or do you want to kind of relax a little bit before booking another fight?
I'd like to get back into the octagon, probably in the first quarter. I do now know that I like to have anywhere between 8 and 10 weeks of camp just to get, just to make sure that I didn't leave any stone unturned. And that's something that I know now because I have taken fights quicker, and it didn't help me physically or mentally. And that's not to say that I won't be in the gym helping out my other teammates and training.
Speaking of some of your other teammates, I just want to get your thoughts on Cub Swanson, one of your teammates. He had what most are already picking as the fight of the year for 2016 against Doo-Ho Choi. Just as a teammate, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that incredible fight there at UFC 206.
It's exactly that. It was incredible. This is why we watch the sport of MMA, because people like to see, when people like Cub and his opponent get into the octagon, they leave it in the cage. They don't hold back for nothing. And when you see that, it just makes you appreciative, because they're really giving like part of their lives to us so that we can be entertained. And so it was a great win for Cub, and definitely I would vouch for fight of the year.
Now, I wanted to get your thoughts real quickly, of course, being a former Invicta champion yourself, with Cris Cyborg and this whole situation here with the newly announced featherweight championship for the UFC women's division. And, of course, it looks like she had every opportunity to fight for that championship. For whatever reason, claimed that she couldn't. Instead, now we get to see Holly Holm against Jeraine Duranamy for the title coming up early next year. Do you think the situation where maybe Cyborg's done with the UFC, or do you still think a chance that she will be able to fight and compete despite all this, craziness with her and Dana White? You can't deny Cyborg's star power, and I think it just lends to more drama, and more drama means more viewership. So I think that she still has a spot in the UFC, especially if they're opening up the 145 division. There's not very many women that are able to fight in that division, so she has a home. I'm sure she definitely has to make some changes, maybe in her training regimen, cutting off some muscle. But I mean, if the UFC is someplace that she wants to be, then I think that's just something that she is going to have to do. Now, of course, one of your teammates, Holly Holm, who I just mentioned, she obviously is getting ready for the title. Obviously, we still got a few months until that happens, but how's she looking so far there in the gym?
Holly looks great. I mean, I looked up to her as an athlete, as a fighter, as a person. She's one of my biggest role models, and what I love about her is that she never forces anything on anybody else. She leads by example, and she's the hardest working person I know. If she's not in the gym, she's running, or if she's not running, she's grappling, and she's not doing that, she's doing something else. Her real estate. I mean, she's never sitting. She's never idle. So when I'm not feeling like training, I always think to myself, what would Holly do? And then I go train.
Now, of course, the woman Holly beat for the Bantamweight Championship about a year ago is making her return, that being Ronda Rousey. She is taking on current champion Amanda Nunes. That's coming up later this week at UFC 207. What are your thoughts about that matchup for the Women's Bantamweight Championship?
I think it'll be an interesting matchup. It's been a while since we've all seen Ronda, and so I just don't know where her head's at from her last loss. And so I'd love to see her come out there with the with the ferociousness that she did when she was the champ. It would lead for a great fight. Amanda Nunes isn't somebody to sleep on. She has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. She has a black belt in judo. She's a heavy hitter. So Ronda has to be on her A game. I'm excited to see the fight.
Of course, we just had Christmas yesterday. So, of course, how was your Christmas and everything, Michelle?
It was amazing. I got to come down to Colorado and spend time with my family. I don't get to see them too often because I'm training, and when you travel, it throws a wrench in everything. So just to spend time with the family and have my little one spend time with their cousins that she don't see that often. It's nice, My husband and I got to stay downtown Denver, and we're just kind of just relaxing from the year and a half of grind that we've just endured.
Now, did you have to worry about getting your daughter a Hatchimal or any hot toy like that?
Oh my gosh, I tried my hardest to get that Hatchimal. And it didn't work. And I wasn't going to spend $300 on an egg that hatched that she'd probably lose interest in a couple of days. So, so she didn't get a Hatchimal, unfortunately.
What did you have to end up getting instead? I'm sure she was excited by it either way.
Yeah, we got her some shoes that you can light up, and they're actually rechargeable. They're LED lights on the bottom that you can change different designs and stuff, and they're like metallic pink, and she's all about those shoes right now. And so I think honestly just the fact that she's able to spend time with her family makes her happy. So the gifts are secondary.
Absolutely. And of course, you got a nice kind of Christmas present beating Paige Van Zandt, but what did you actually get for Christmas that you really enjoyed besides that?
Well, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to crafts, and like I'm a planner addict just because I love to be able to look into my planner and be inspired. So I make it pretty, and I kind of doodle in there, and I journal in my planner, and I kind of keep it as a keepsake of all the things that I've done throughout the year. So my husband got me a Hobonichi planner from Japan, and then he got me a set of really expensive watercolor markers, and I'm just in love with that. Just playing with it.
Well, that's awesome. Of course, 2017 is almost upon us, so what are your plans for New Year's?
The New Year's, I'm thinking, is just going to be low-key. We might spend some time with my husband's family, and then back on the grind. We'll watch the UFC fights, and then we'll just get back on the grind. Keep our eyes on the prize.
All right, Michelle, I'll get you out of here with this. Of course, with the coming year, what can we expect from the Karate Hottie in 2017?
I'd love to be able to fight for that belt.
She is Michelle Waterson. You can follow her on Twitter at Karate Hottie MMA as well as Instagram. And Michelle, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it and look forward to you returning into action next year.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Happy holidays.
You too. Once again, that was the Karate Hottie Michelle Waterson right here on Beyond the Cage. As you just heard, that was the Karate Hottie herself, Michelle Waterson, here on Beyond the Cage, breaking down her performance and obviously some of her comments that she made here for her fight against Paige Van Zandt. It went pretty smoothly. I mean, like she said, I don't know why people are sleeping on her grappling, but I always thought she had a very good ground game. You go back to her fight there against Jessica Penne. This is a girl that definitely has a lot of skills. I mean, the Karate Hottie, while it is a great nickname, she does have karate skills. I think people just only focus on that because that's her nickname, but she's so much more about it. She is a pretty complete mixed martial artist, and I think in this fight, felt it out in the feet a little bit, went inside, and was able to get that takedown. I think really, other than Rose, not too many people have really come out and attacked Paige. Paige has done a very good job of setting the pace early, and I think in this fight, maybe because of that stand-up, maybe not wanting to rush too in on a good striker, getting caught maybe with some good counters and kicks, maybe we saw Paige not rush in as much as she had in other fights and really attack Waterson head-on. And I think that kind of little bit of a feeling out, that little more range to it, I think helped Waterson a lot. And she was able to take full advantage of Paige, who obviously does have a good ground game when she's on top, but obviously still needs to work on when she's on bottom. And I think that Rose fight maybe exploited her a little bit, that she's tough, she grits out of a lot of things, but it's not a lot of technique behind it. It's still very raw, and it's power-based. And I think Waterson a fighter that, one, was hungry to get back in there. As she said, she was out 17 months, and it was hard to train for that amount of time and not see the reward of having a fight and having a victory. So I think finally having a fight, having it be a main event, she was hungry, and she wanted to go out there and put on a show and prove that she is one of the best 115-pound women in the world. And she absolutely did that, and she did that on a huge stage against a very well-known and popular opponent. And I think for Waterson, like I was saying, she shoots up the rankings. You know, she puts herself potentially, because of the way Joanna has been knocking off contenders left and right, Waterson does put herself in a very advantageous position. Now, with Jessica Andrade not fighting Marina Moroz here recently, Jessica Andrade, Waterson potentially could be a number one contender fight. Maybe the Moroz fight still happens with Andrade. I think Andrade does need one more. To me, she's the next contender I would like to see the UFC set up for Joanna. Obviously, a fight against Claudia Gadelha I think would be excellent, or Carla Esparza. And I honestly think, even though she's coming off a loss, both Rose and Carolina, I think those would be excellent matchups for Michelle Waterson too. So a lot of things here. It's unfortunate that the Moroz-Andrade fight couldn't happen, because a victory by either, you can really make a case that they're the next one in line. So now the division's kind of on hold for a little bit, because there's not one girl that, to me, really deserves it. And I would like to see Michelle get one more fight as well as Andrade, but I would say those are probably the two leading candidates. They may end up fighting each other. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm really looking forward to what she brings to the table, because yeah, it was a dominant victory against Angela Magana. She got the victory in the third round. But to go out there and take out Paige in her adopted hometown in the first main event after a 17th-month layoff, that's an incredible performance. And even though she's a good friend show, I picked against her because of the layoff. And she totally proved me wrong. And I'm glad she did. And she's definitely moving up, and as she said, she's looking forward to a great 2017, possibly fighting for the belt, which she certainly put herself in line for, and she should be back sometime early next year with the big fight, potentially a number one contender fight. For Paige, got to work on the ground game. That's really is. Really work on off her back. She's good on top. She can move in. Obviously, her striking's ever improving. She had that great knockout there of Beck Rollins. I think by no means is she done. Again, like Sage, this is her second loss in the UFC. Again, let's not forget, she is a very, very young fighter. She's only 24, or I'm sorry, she's only 22 years old and has 10 professional fights. You know, with them all coming like in Invicta and the UFC, with over half of those in the UFC, and the two losses, she lost to top 10 talent, and Rose Namajunas and Michelle Waterson. And she's beaten some good fighters too, in Felice Herrig and Beck Rawlings. So she's definitely progressing. I mean, let's not say Paige is done or anything like that. She obviously still has a lot of room to work on that category, and she'll be back. She's come back from those losses before, and I don't think any reason why this should get her down. Sure, it's disappointing to go out like that in your hometown. You know, I'm sure she'll take the rest of the year to regroup. And, you know, she came out damaged, unscathed, so, you know, really, once she's able to regroup mentally, she can come back strong. I'm sure she'll want to be right back in there, and she's still one of the girls that is the top girls in the division, and obviously she's very popular from her run on Dancing with the Stars and everything. But, you know, I think Paige is going to be all right. I don't think this loss is going to... it shouldn't, define her career or anything, but obviously it definitely shows where she needs to work on, because both losses have been by rear naked choke, and they have been because, you know, she's been off her back. So obviously that's the hole in her game, and she's going to have to really work on that if she wants to be an elite fighter. Let's get to UFC 207 coming up this Friday, December 30th. That's right, not Saturday. Saturday is New Year's Eve, so not having the fight there. But it is Las Vegas around New Year's Eve time. A great town to be in for this time of year. Of course, the weather's not too bad either. UFC 207 will have 5 preliminary fights. A lot of good preliminary fights. I know a lot of people are talking about the Cain Velasquez thing on being unfit. There was still a chance for Doom said he would fight some people and stuff. You know, we're already on Tuesday of the week before the fight. that's probably not going to happen, unfortunately. Maybe Verdum still gets someone good pretty close here. I don't know. We'll see. But a lot of good fights. Kicks off on the Fight Pass. Alex Oliveira takes on Tim Means. Super excited for this fight. This should be an excellent fight at 170. Guys are both very similar guys that were kind of too big for 155 who have moved up. Both have incredible striking, kind of have a mean streak in them, and I'm very excited for that one. I'm definitely going to be tuning into Fight Pass to see that one at 7:30. Then looking at the FS1 prelims starting at 8 o'clock. Brandon Thatch, always an entertaining dude. He returns against Nico Price, who I believe will be making his UFC debut. Then longtime veteran of the sport, Mike Pyle, will take on Alex Garcia. Alex Garcia, definitely one of the young guns here in the division. Should be fun to see him take on a wily veteran like Mike Pyle, who always seems to make it an entertaining fight. Then in the middleweight division, we're going to see Marvin Vettori. He was victorious in his last fight. I think that was on the UFC Vancouver on Fox card against Antonio Carlos Jr., former winner of the Ultimate Fighter Brazil. Very good grappler. And I think I remember his last fight. I don't know if his last fight was against Dan Kelly, I believe, which I believe he did lose against Dan Kelly. Dan Kelly had that come from behind victory. Oh, he did win his last fight. Okay. He able to return and defeated Augusto Lieco back at the Fight Night in September. I think that was the Fight Night Hidalgo in Texas. So he did return to the winning track, submitting him in the third round. And like I said, taking on Vettori, who I believe only has one or two UFC fights to his credit. One, like you said, he took on Alberto Uda, submitting him in the first round. That was actually at UFC 202. I must be getting confused with someone. Anyways, so Vettori making his second fight. Definitely step up in competition. Carlos Tunis Jr. is a very accomplished Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. And highlighting the FS1 prelims, former UFC welterweight champion Johnny Hendricks takes on Neil Magny. Neil Magny, of course, coming off the loss there to Lorenz Larkin, and Johnny Hendricks coming off the loss to Kelvin Gastelum there at UFC 200. And, of course, had lost to Stephen Thompson back in February as well, and had the weight thing with Tyron Woodley. So definitely a guy that's at a crossroads in his career, and if he can't get by Neil Magny, and of course he has to worry about the scale first, if he can't get by that, that really puts his career in flux for a guy at one time was the #1 fighter in the world at this weight class, and looked like he beat George St. Pierre at one point in time. So this is a guy that careers definitely have changed drastically here in the last 18 months, and if Neil Magny can pick him off, he's still ranked at number 6. That does loads for him because he did not look good in that fight against Lorenz Larkin. Getting to the main card, kicking off with our friend of the show, Louis Smolka, as he will be taking on Ray Borg in the flyweight division to kick off the pay-per-view main card starting at 10 p.m. Eastern. Of course, Louis is coming off a disappointing loss to short notice replacement Brandon Moreno, who ended up coming back a few months later and getting a nice victory there over Ryan Benoit in a very nice win there at the Ultimate Fighter finale in Las Vegas just a few weeks ago. But for Lewis, it wasn't really anything super crazy. It's just he kind of tucked his head and got caught. And I think that's got to be more disappointing, him just kind of doing a little mistake, than it was simply losing to Brandon Moreno. Because I think Brandon Moreno is a good talent. But I think just the way he lost, I'm sure, was probably disappointing to Lewis, and now he's coming against Ray Borg, guy I think he was actually scheduled against at one time. And for Ray Borg, he's had some injury problems here, and he's kind of dipped his ranking a little bit. At one point was in the top 10, has now dipped there, and did have that loss back in February to Justin Scoggins, which I believe was his first loss in the UFC since losing to Dustin Ortiz back in his debut in April of 2014. He had rattled off 3 consecutive victories in between them. So this is obviously a bounce-back fight for both of them. Ray Borg, he's been out for about 9-10 months here. So how's he going to recover from that? And for Smolka, how's he going to come out? Is he going to come out, really aggressive, trying to avenge that loss? Or, does he maybe come out reckless a little bit? Or does he kind of go back to the same kind of calm fighter we saw take out, Ben Wynn and Patty Houlihan? Now, Ray Borg is no more for a grappler, and Louis Smolka has definitely improved in that category in his game and is very comfortable off his back. And a lot of times, especially going back to those wins in Houlihan fight, had lost the first round, had been on his back, but then was able to turn the tables and capitalize on some switches and really take it from there. And to me, that's a big thing in Ray Borg. Maybe he'll have the successful first round. He'll come out, take down, maybe tie Smoke up. Ray Borg being the smaller of the two fighters, 5 inches shorter than Lewis. That's definitely a big difference and definitely has a reach disadvantage as well by 5 inches as well. So, being the smaller guy, will he be able to get inside, land those takedowns effectively? And when he does, can he hold Smoke there? Can he stop submissions? Can he stop transitions? Because Lewis has proved that he's a guy that just doesn't sit on his back and wait for the refs to stand it. He's always moving. He's always trying for something, a very squirmy guy. And the fact that he's going to be very hungry for this victory, considering how his last fight went, that could give him some extra motivation to get back on the winning track and back into the top 10. But should be a good fight to kick off the main card here for UFC 207. Next fight of the evening, Dong Hyun Kim against Tarek Saffiedine. Dong Hyun Kim, unfortunately, got caught by Mike Perry in his last effort. Actually, no, not Mike Perry. I think that was Gung Hyu Lim. Getting my guys confused here. But Dong Hyun Kim, I believe, fought last. Oh, that's right. Wow. So it's been over a year since we've seen Dong Hyun Kim, who knocked out Dominic Waters back at the fight night in his home country of South Korea. I guess I didn't realize it had been that long since Kim has fought. Kim has won 6 out of his last 7 fights. His only loss coming to Tyron Woodley. That was back in August of 2014. Has not fought at all so far, like I said, in 2016, not since November of 2015. So a guy that's already in his mid-30s, how's he going to deal with that long of a layoff? Coming against Tarek Saffiedine, who sure did lose to Rick Story back in May, but that was a very close fight. And the one thing that Tarek Saffiedine is a very technical striker. And for Dong Hyun Kim, a guy that very early in his career was more of a, really showed his dominant grappling with his judo skills, kind of really, I would say in the last 2-3 years has really shown that he doesn't want to be known as a boring fighter. Has really kind of thrown a lot of caution to the wind and really started kind of going for it and being aggressive with his strikings. And he's had a couple of spectacular knockout wins and losses in that time period. And I think if we see that Dong Hyun Kim against a guy that's such a technician in Tarek Saffiedine, I think that Saffiedine is going to be able to pick him apart. But if we see more of the judo stylings and the guy that imposes his size and will in the grappling game, even though Saffiedine is a tough guy to take down, Dong Hyun Kim's a huge dude. This is a dude that can probably take down just about anybody in the division and has the skill set to back up his size as well. So I think if it's crazy Dong Hyun Kim, I think we can see Tarek Saffiedine pick him apart, but I think if it's more of methodical, kind of old school Dong Hyun Kim, then he can easily get the win and impose his will on Tarek Saffiedine, because even though Saffiedine is a tough guy to take down, eventually that size does wear on you, and Kim will take you down, and he has a very suffocating top game, which no one really has been able to get out from under. Next fight of the evening in the bantamweight division. This one I'm pretty sure will be a number 1 contender fight. TJ Dillashaw against John Lineker. Even though Lineker had a great 5-round performance against John Dodson, I think it's a good thing for him that this is not a 5-round fight. I think TJ Dillashaw, just the way he fights, the way he arcs as a fighter, how he gets better with every round, he peaks at the end. He's constantly building and moving up with momentum. He has that in and out style, great head movement, the punches and bunches. He's throwing change-up with hard stuff because he has knockout power. This would have, I don't know if Lineker would have been able to last 25 minutes against him, but it being a 15-minute fight can really help Lineker, a guy that has had problems with weight, not just in the flyweight division, but he actually did miss weight for his last fight at 135 pounds. So, again, that's something that John Lineker has to worry about first, whereas Dillashaw's never had a problem with weight. And, of course, Dillashaw's definitely hungry to get back into the title picture. Of course, he's seen the guy that beat him for the belt fighting just after him, and a guy that he's trained with, too, and Cody Garbrandt, to get a chance possibly over him. That's maybe how Dillashaw will look at it. So, Definitely a guy that might have a fire under him a little bit. And for Lineker, this is his chance, But the thing is, he's got to make weight. If he misses weight again and beats TJ Dillashaw, it won't matter because they're not going to give a guy who's missed weight at 2 fights in a weight class they forced him up to get a title shot. So he kind of already has to worry about one battle first before he ever has to step inside the cage and try to fight TJ Dillashaw. Now, Dillashaw, much like John Dodson, does have a lot of great footwork. However, Dillashaw is more willing to go into the pocket, will throw a little more output there, is more willing to bang a little bit. And I think this is, as great as that main event was against John Dodson, I think we're going to see maybe even a more exciting fight because Dillashaw will be willing to go in the pocket a little bit more. And also, I think we're going to see Dillashaw try to take down Lineker. We really didn't see that from John Dodson. Not a guy that really kind of shoots in for the takedown. And that's really going to be the biggest difference is if TJ decides to go that route and really try to out-wrestle Lineker. Now, really since training with Bang, he's took people down, don't get me wrong, but he's turned into less of a wrestling-based attack. That's not to say he can't revert back for this fight, but I'm just saying we really haven't seen him do a lot of that since going with Dwayne Bang Ludwig. So that'll be interesting if he kind of maybe goes back to a little more of that strategy, uses his footwork and level changes for takedowns more so than his striking combinations against the guy in John Lineker, who pretty much is a stand-up fighter. I mean, he does have a couple submission wins to his credit, but not really that many, and is a guy that I think, at least as a jiu-jitsu guy off his back, isn't that talented. So, and again, he's going to be the littler guy in there. He's a 3-inch height difference between the two, and TJ Dillashaw is a very solid bantamweight. So I look for that area, and again, but the 15-minute fight definitely helps John Lineker a little bit in this fight. But I'm really excited to see, and definitely the winner deserves a shot at the winner of the co-main event, Dominick Cruz against Cody Garbrandt. As you saw in the title, Cody Garbrandt will be on the show this week, and before I get to breaking down his co-main event fight, queuing him up on the line right here. He is currently the 5th-ranked bantamweight in the world, Cody Garbrandt. And Cody, thanks again for joining me here on Beyond the Cage.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Showing some love for Ohio.
Speaking of Ohio, I want to start off there. UFC 203, of course, you were in attendance for the first UFC fight in Cleveland. Of course, highlighted by Cleveland's own Jessica Ai and Stipe Miocic fighting on the card. Also, CM Punk made his debut as well. What did you think about the night of fights there in Cleveland? Of course, the crowd, and of course, how Stipe was able to keep the title there for the land.
I mean, for the most part, man, the card kind of was boring to me. Kind of looked like a lackluster card, but so we got the main card, and the crowd was amazing. All fans and how MMA fans come out large. Especially when we have local people that make it to a big stage like that, and Stipe was able to defend his belt in Cleveland. It was awesome. I mean, I got to fight all over him and knock him out, and put the play. The queue went crazy, so that was awesome to see and witness, and to be there. I'm excited for the UFC to be able to come back and back to Ohio and for my first defense.
Getting to your fight here at UFC 207, of course, you're taking on current bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz. So far, other than Uriah Faber, that's the only loss on his record. Considering, obviously, you have Uriah Faber as a great resource there, was it easier than maybe some past fights that you've had in the UFC to really break down Dominick Cruz as opposed to some of your other opponents?
For me, it's always been easy to break down Dominick Cruz and unorthodox movement. It's very simple. Very simple to me with what I have to do, my strategy and game plan in there. It's about not getting emotional, staying calm, pick my shots, and waiting for the right time for him to open up and take him out.
Do you feel that this will be your toughest fight to date?
Every fight that you take is your toughest fight to date. Every fight that you keep climbing the ladder is your toughest fight. I look at every fight as my toughest fight, and then it's on to the next one. That's my toughest fight. We're fighting the best people in the world. These are people in the UFC, and these are the toughest fighters in the world. There's no easy fight in the UFC, no matter who it is against. But yeah, for me, it's just another fight, and it happens just to be for the world title.
Now, Dominic Cruz, even though his nickname is the Dominator, a lot of people have called him the Decisionator, as he has 14 decision victories to his credit out of 21 wins. Obviously, a guy that definitely fights to the judges a lot. Does going 25 minutes, do you feel confident that you would be able to do that if that's how this fight ends up boiling down to?
Definitely. If I needed to, I could go all night. I have world-class cardio. I come in shape. Cardio is never a factor for me, And really, man, conditioning is all mental. When you get tired, and you're going to get tired in there. It's about keeping, your mental fortitude in there, your vision, your keen, you have to be sharp. You're going to get tired, I think really, man, cardio is, you get in cardio shape and you push, but really when you get tired no matter what, you just have to push through. That's a mental aspect of cardio to push to that next level.
Even though Dominic Cruz does have some pretty good head work and foot movement, people forget that he's a pretty good wrestler as well. Do you feel as though he may try to attack you more with takedowns than we have seen him do in previous fights?
Of course, that's what his game plan is. He's going to try to be elusive and evade my power and try to take me down and, doing as much as he can. I look like his game plan is going to be what Demetrius did with Demetrius Johnson.
Now, of course, you come into this fight having 9 knockouts to your record out of 10 fights. Do you feel as though that you would be able to catch him at some point in the fight and put him down to become the champion?
I think it's harder to run for 25 minutes. For me to land a single, I got to land one in 25 minutes. I think it's going to be easier for me to land, on him. Excuse me. Be able to land on him, for him to evade for 25 minutes. So, whatever I have to do to get this win, I'm more willing and prepared to go out there and do it. But in the back of my mind, I'm able to knock him out with one shot. But I'm ready for a high-paced back-and-forth war, But that's what I prepared for in training. My coaches and teammates get me ready for. But like I said, I just got to land one or two shots, and and have his body crumble into the canvas.
You two had a heated exchange during the UFC on Fox Sacramento broadcast in between fights. Did you plan for it to get kind of out of hand like that, or is that just kind of how things progressed where you and him were talking there on the broadcast with John Aiken?
Yeah, I figured, this would be, get to this point, Dominic has thin skin and can't take an insult, but he can dish it out. He's like one of those bullies in school that, can, pick on everybody once he gets the bully is picked on, and, goes and cries to the teacher, or he cries to the principal or whatever. I figured that's how it was going to go and how it was going to be all fight camp, but it didn't, I didn't lose focus or anything on the task at hand and my responsibilities on December 30th, and that's being a world champion.
Now, of course, speaking of UFC on Fox Sacramento, of course, Uriah Faber made his last appearance inside the octagon by defeating Brad Pickett by decision. And if you could sum up just in a few words, Uriah's career and what he's meant to you as an aspiring fighter now going for his first championship.
It was nice to see kind of a storybook ending, There's a new stadium in Sacramento, those first fights that were held in there. And it was a farewell fight, and he fought a tough opponent, and Brad Pickett, and Brad, as tough as they come, and, Uriah looked like, the old school Uriah was mixing it up, looked really well. I thought he had him out of there a couple of times, but, it's the toughness and durability of Pickett to stay in there, but it was nice to see, his last fight, and being in the hometown, so it was very, very exciting for me a few weeks before my fight to get those emotions and see that kind of the storybook ending with his career.
All right, Cody, I'll get you out of here with this. Of course, you're fighting for the bantamweight championship of the world. What would it mean to you to be the champion of the UFC and defeat a guy like Dominick Cruz?
It'd be a dream come true. Something that I, been chasing for so many years. It's been my passion to be a world champion. And, just the next step of my career and the next level. And it's putting, more notches in my belt. And, hopefully it's building my legacy. And that's what I set out to do, is build a legacy. Build a legacy when I'm long and gone that, I'll live on. I was one of the greatest bantamweights to ever fight. One of the greatest fighters to ever fight, I'm very excited to test my medal again. Dominick Cruz, arguably the best bantamweight fighter in the world, and capturing this feat. I know what I have to do. I know my responsibilities. I know what I have to do to become a world champion. The ball's in my court. Everyone's got me for this day, for this time, and it's up to me now to go out there and perform and get the job done.
He is Cody Garbrandt. You can follow him on Twitter at Cody_NoLove. And Cody, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and look forward to your fight on Friday.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Once again, that was Cody Garbrandt right here on Beyond the Cage. Once again, that was Cody Garbrandt here on Beyond the Cage, up ahead of his title fight here against Dominick Cruz for UFC 207 in Las Vegas, Friday, December 30th. And while Cody definitely has a lot of tremendous talent, I mean, these two are, the only little difference is 3-inch difference in reach, but they're the same height. They have pretty much the same leg rate. They both have Cody is undefeated. Dominick Cruz just the one blemish there against Uriah Faber. Really, to me, as Cody's saying, yeah, it's harder to dance around for 25 minutes than it is for me to land one punch. But the thing is, Cruz really has never been hit with anything significant. As much as I and him and anyone else can say, yeah, it's a lot harder, Dominick Cruz has proven that time and time again he can do that for 25 minutes, and he's very content on doing that, and he will do that. That's just what he does. And so far, other than that loss to Uriah Faber, very young in his career, he's been able to do that with just about everybody. He has this weird, awkward style where he kind of sometimes even leads in with his head before backing away. He has incredible footwork, head movements, and just really knows how to judge range. He knows how to move and not get hit. Now, sure, he's not always hitting you with the most power. As I mentioned in the interview, kind of has been referred to as the decisionator. 14 of his 22 victories are by decision. Does have 7 knockouts to his credit, but a guy that definitely goes for the long haul. He definitely tries to break you mentally, and then just when he thinks he has you, puzzled on the feet, he'll swoop in and take a couple of takedowns and dominate you from that standpoint. And I think Dominick will, for the most part, start out primarily testing him on the feet. I think he will kind of get his feet wet a little bit, so to speak, moving around. And I think when we get to rounds 2 and 3, I think that's when we're going to see really Dominick Cruz use the footwork and movement to set up the takedowns. I think he's going to see what Cody has to offer in the stand-up and then go to attack. And I think Cody does have a wrestling background, did wrestle some high school wrestling there in Northeast Ohio. Actually did at one point have a scholarship to Ohio State, ended up turning and becoming a professional fighter. But and obviously has been training with great wrestlers there at Team Alpha Male, has the tutelage there of Uriah Faber, who has fought this guy 3 times, among some other training partners that have gone against Dominick Cruz. So he definitely has a wealth of knowledge on how to break down Dominick Cruz, and probably from that has seen a lot of film of this guy, and maybe has a better idea of how to attack him, maybe so, than anybody else in the world. And that definitely helps him. But Dominick Cruz is a guy that, as much as you watch tape and as much as you try to simulate and practice, there's really only one Dominick Cruz. And I've seen a lot of fights covering this sport for 10 years, and I don't know if I've ever seen anybody move the way Dominick Cruz does at any division. The way he cuts angles, the way he feints, the way he changes levels, the way he throws punches, the way, like I said, the way he sometimes even kind of leans into his head with a little bit. None of that stuff is orthodox stuff. It's definitely next level, unique stuff. And it's going to be very hard. Is Cody going to be the guy to crack it? It's hard to say. No one's done it. So is Cody going to be the guy, though? I'm very intrigued to watch, and either way, it's definitely going to be a great learning experience for Cody. Again, only his 11th professional fight, just 25 years old, and a guy that is the future of this division. I mean, he still has a lot of fights ahead of him. And not to say that Dominic Cruz is going to be retiring after this fight or anything like that, but Dominic Cruz is already 31, has had some major injury time taken away from him from this sport, and sooner or later someone will get him, but will it be tonight, or will it be Friday night at UFC 207? That is the question. Main event, women's bantamweight championship, as Ronda Rousey returns after losing the title in Australia last November to Holly Holm. Amanda Nunes has been on quite a roll since losing to Kat Zingano a few years ago in a fight which she was dominating the first round before losing in the third round back in 2014. She has rattled off 3 consecutive victories, being the likes of Shayna Baszler, Sarah McMahon, and Valentina Shevchenko, before earning her shot at the title against Miesha Tate and absolutely dominating and submitting Miesha Tate in the main event of UFC 200 earlier this year in July. And really, other than that fight against Kat Zingano, is 5-1 in the UFC and has finished 4 of her 5 victories, with 4 of them rather. She's actually 6-1 in the UFC, with 4 of those finished victories coming inside the first round. She is absolutely nasty. She is a huge fighter for this weight class, and a girl that, if you can make it out of the first round, sure, maybe you can win, but more times than not, she's been able to get out of the first round. And for Ronda Rousey, very similar style. Definitely a girl that's very aggressive, obviously great judo skills, being a judo Olympian. Amanda Nunes is also a judo black belt. She also has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And even though these two are very similar stylistically, obviously, girls that are very aggressive and come at you at a hurry, the difference is Amanda Nunes is probably at her best mindset and best level that she's ever been coming into this fight as the champion, whereas Ronda, she's been out for a year. Where's her head been? She's had to go through, media calling out and a whole bunch of stuff, and her coach and Travis Brown. She's had a lot of things happen. She's never really, a lot of people think she hasn't dealt with this loss in a great way, and, is she going to be in the right space to take on a woman who's a straight-up killer, and Amanda Nunes? Is she going to be ready for that? How will she deal with someone that, when she goes forward, is also moving forward too? She's never really had somebody do that before. That's going to be in her face as much as she wants to be in the other girl's face. So this is a very scary fight, and for Ronda, because we kind of don't know where she's at. She's kept a lot of things close to the vest, and really hasn't done too many media and speaking engagements, and because I had talked about doing more movies and talk about, she only has a couple more fights left, and it seems like she's talking about everything but fighting. And so where's she going to be at against a girl who's right now primed to make a huge run? It's going to be fun. I'm intrigued, and obviously a lot of people are as well, and they're going to be tuning in to see how Ronda does in her return after a year layoff from the sport against a very dominant fighter right now in Amanda Nunes. With that said, let's get to picks here. UFC 207, Friday, December 30th from Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile Arena. Starting first with the top 15 matchup in the flyweight division, Louis Smolka against Ray Borg. I actually like both guys. Of course, I've had Louis on the show several times and hope to have him on again in the near future. And while I think Ray Borg definitely has the tools to win, I think Smolka has proved that he's a hard guy to keep down. He's a guy that has seemed to turn the table on guys that have tried to out-grapple him here in the last couple of fights. So I'm going to go with Louis Smolka to win. Dong Hun Kim against Tarek Saffiedine. Not sure what Dong Hun Kim we're going to see. Again, the guy that's been off for a while. And, for Saffiedine, a guy that definitely came with a lot of hype into the UFC, being the last ever Strike First welterweight champion, I really feel like he has not. He's kind of been underwhelming, to be honest. He's had some fights against top guys. I don't know. I think he's kind of been mediocre at best. And I'm going to go with Dong Hun Kim. I know he's had a little bit of a long layoff but a guy that always comes in an extreme shape, and I think his size is going to be such a difference in this fight, and I think it's going to really help him and propel him to victory. So I'm going to go with Young Hun Kim to win this one. TJ Dillashaw against John Lineker. John Lineker, again, he has a puncher's chance, but I think TJ Dillashaw, just his strategy of mixing things up and moving in and out, I think Lineker, yeah, he may be able to land one or two, but I think for the most part, the output that Dillashaw can put on you, I think is going to be a big difference in this fight. And I'm going to go with TJ Dillashaw to win and get a shot at the title with it. Cody Garbrandt against Dominic Cruz. Obviously, thanks again for Cody for coming on. Really appreciate him coming back to the show, and obviously a guy I definitely root for. Spending a lot of time in my life in Ohio. Obviously, even though I'm still from Michigan and proud to be, I always look as Ohio as my second home. So I'm always going to root for guys from Ohio. But like I said, is this the time that Dominic Cruz loses? Is Cody the guy that figures him out? I think maybe Cody figures him out eventually, but not tonight. I think right now it's Dominic Cruz, and as much as I'd love to see Cody win, I think right now it's Dominic Cruz's time, and I think we're going to see another successful title defense. I think Cody's going to maybe have a little more difficult than he thinks getting on the inside and trying to land some of those big strikes, and because Cruz can absolutely dance for 25 minutes, and that's what he's going to do, maybe mixing some takedowns, and I don't think it's going to be quite like Dom against Faber 3. I think it's going to be a little closer than that, but I do think Cruz is going to walk away with his hand raised in another successful title defense. Amanda Nunes against Ronda Rousey. I'm going Amanda Nunes. I'm not really sure where Ronda's at, and I think every area that you think Ronda's good at, I think Nunes is just as better, or just as good, if not better. And I think just right now, the mental spot that Amanda Nunes is, to me, just way better than Ronda Rousey. A woman who definitely kind of prides herself and kind of has always had that chip on her shoulder, of being the best and doing these things. And that kind of was taken away from her a little bit from that loss. And how will she return from that? And I'm not sure if fighting this girl at this time off the layoff the way she did maybe is the best move, but that's the position she's in. And I got to go with Amanda Nunes. I think she's going to be the first girl since Ronda to actually defend her title successfully, and we're going to see Amanda Nunes possibly become a pretty big star if she can take out Ronda Rousey here at the New Year's Eve. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest on the show this evening in Michelle Waterson and Cody Garbrandt. And again, thanks again for returning to the show, guys. I really appreciate it and look forward to seeing, again, Cody fight at 207 and Michelle having an excellent 2017. I would like to wish everybody, if they already did, a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays, a Happy Hanukkah, a Happy New Year's as well for 2017, and hope 2016 was everything that you wanted to be, and hope it can even be better for you in 2017. And obviously I hope that for myself, and look forward to having another great year of Beyond the Cage and bringing you more great breakdowns, recaps, and of course fighter interviews as well. I'd like to thank all the people that have supported me this show as well as this year, and AJ Hiller at MMAsignatures.co, Sean Jacoby at American Icon Autographs, Flying Brian J on Twitter at Flying Brian J and Flying Brian Show. Of course, the King himself, always retweeting my stuff, and a great guy to follow, always putting out some great stuff there on Twitter at the King Izzy Garcia. Thank you again, sir. MMA fight fans, always retweeting my stuff. Again, thank you very much. The MMAcommunity.com, top site in the world for mixed martial arts forums and discussions, and they do live Q&A sessions with professional fighters as well. They've been supporting me this past year. Thanks again to the MMAcommunity.com, on Twitter at the MMA Community. Of course, on Facebook, the great blog there, MMA Fight Club on Facebook, facebook.com/MMA Fight Club. Thanks to those guys supporting me and supporting Beyond the Cage. And of course, a great place to converse with fellow mixed martial arts fans as well. Top-rated MMA.com, Sports Talk 313, representing Detroit, as I said, and Michigan as well in sports, and I'm glad I'm able to do my part on that website as well. Of course, follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham, and follow me on Instagram at the Jim Graham, and of course, like Beyond the Cage on Facebook at facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. Here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Please like and share the show. and all that good stuff. And if you prefer, we are on iTunes and Google Play, and you can enjoy the podcast that way as well. And check out, if you missed any interviews or you want to just hear the audio version, check out my interview backlog at soundcloud.com/Jim Graham as well. So thank you for everybody. I hope you had a great 2016, like I said, and look forward to 2017 next year for Beyond the Cage. I am Jim Graham, and thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage.